Hello, my name's Rob and I'm part of the clergy team here in Portishead. Welcome to our thought for this week. Charles Dickens' books are populated by a real range of characters, many of them interesting and intriguing, beautifully presented and painted in words by Dickens. Some of them quite repellent. And in his novel, David Copperfield, Charles Dickens introduces us to the character Uriah Heep. Uriah Heep is frankly, a rather oily individual who is always talking about how terribly humble he is. He comes from humble circumstances, but his humility is false or hypocritical humility. And he plays it as a card as he seeks to manipulate those he comes into contact with, not least his employer, Mr. Wickfield, who he encourages in his alcoholism and eventually manages to extort, really, his business from him. And he seeks to take his daughter's hand, Agnes, in marriage. Becomes David Copperfield's nemesis, really, in the story. But Uriah Heep's humility is a tool that he uses to give himself reason to resent other people. His kind of humble origins, he uses these to imagine that the people he's engaged with are looking down on him, and then with that reason to resent them, he then feels justified in taking advantage of that and abusing their friendship and extorting things from them. It is a false humility. And it stands in real contrast from the humility that the Bible presents as a virtue, something that we should seek to be. The word humility has the same root as the word humus, soil, and it takes us back to the very first pages of the Bible, where we're told that human beings were created out of the earth, and takes us through the words from Ash Wednesday, when as we are anointed with ashes, we're told, remember your dust, and to dust you will return. And indeed, the words at the prayer of committal in a funeral service, when we are told that, earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. These things all remind us that of our humble origins, and we see it too in Paul's letter to the Philippians, where he says that Jesus, who, although he was in very nature God, did not consider his equality with God as something to be taken advantage of, but made himself nothing, taking the form of a servant. Jesus gave up so much in order to come and live among us. This is the description of humility that the Bible gives to us. And I think it's in this light that we come to the passage that's set by the lectionary for this week, for this Thursday, and it's from Matthew 5, and it's taken from the Sermon on the Mount. So these are words that Jesus is saying, and they're not easy words, but I think we need to look at these words through that lens of humility. So it's from Matthew 5, verses 20 to 26, where Jesus says, "For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. You have heard that it was said to those of ancient times, 'You shall not murder,' and whoever murders shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you that if you are angry with a brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment. And if you insult a brother or sister, you will be liable to the council. And if you say, 'You fool,' you will be liable to the hell of fire. So when you are offering your gift at the altar, if you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First, be reconciled to your brother or sister, and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are on the way to court with him, or your accuser may hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you will be thrown into prison. Truly I tell you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny. They're strong words, and I think if you're like me, we always react a little bit against words from Scripture that talk or imply judgment. But I think what Jesus is talking about here is the importance of being humble in our relationships with others, of making sure that we don't think of ourselves more highly than we ought, that we're not overly critical of other people, recognising that we too are inclined to make mistakes, and that we should be ready to say sorry, to forgive, and to be reconciled with those we fall out with. And we can only do that if we recognise our shared humanity with them. And this is so important, particularly perhaps in this current age, that humility should mark all of us as human beings, but it should particularly mark those of us who call ourselves Christians, who seek to follow in the way of Christ, who himself made himself nothing. And in an age when it seems that politicians find it increasingly difficult to speak the truth, or to say sorry, to admit it when they've done wrong, and perhaps our media is a part in fault for that, because it offers no quarter when people are perceived to be weak, or indeed with social media, when people say things online that I suspect they would never say to somebody's face and can cause huge hurt and pain. It's so important that we, those of us who profess to be Christians, should seek to put others first in our relationships with them, should recognise that we are all frail, and yet we are all loved by God, and should treat others with kindness, with fairness, with decency, with respect, and with humility. May God bless you.